I used to think the most humiliating thing that could happen to a man at a party was being the only one who didn't realize he was the punchline. I was wrong. It turned out the most humiliating thing was sitting 3 feet away from your wife while she announced to a room full of half-drunk adults that she did not love you anymore, and then smiled like she had just shared a charming little anecdote about switching to almond milk. But I am getting ahead of myself. My name is Dean. I was 36 years old, employed, mortgage-paying, gym-going, tax-filing, grill-owning, and, until recently, stupid enough to believe that when your wife says, "I'm just tired," she might actually mean tired. In my defense, married men are trained like lab dogs to ignore obvious danger signs. Wife gets colder? She is stressed. Wife laughs at her phone and tilts it away from you? Probably a meme. Wife starts dressing better for book club than she did for your anniversary dinner? Personal growth. My wife, Vanessa, had always been the kind of woman who could walk into a room and make every other woman adjust something on herself. Hair, blouse, posture, attitude, personality. She had that polished, bright, socially lethal kind of beauty. When we first met, I thought that edge was confidence. By year 7 of marriage, I realized confidence and contempt wear the same lipstick. Things had been off for months. Not in the dramatic movie way where you find some stranger's message lighting up her phone at midnight, complete with emojis that don't belong in a marriage. No. Vanessa was smarter than that. Her betrayal, whatever shape it had taken, wore clean lines and expensive heels. It started with tone. That is how disrespect enters a marriage when it wants to feel sophisticated. Not screaming, not slam doors. Did you seriously load the dishwasher like that? Wow, you're wearing that? You're so sensitive lately. You always make things heavier than they need to be. That last one was funny because it usually came right after she had dropped an emotional cinder block on my head. At first I pushed back. Vanessa, I'm not making things heavy. You just spoke to me like I'm your least favorite employee. She would blink innocently, tilt her head and say, "See? This is what I mean. Everything becomes a thing with you." There is no martial art more dangerous than a manipulative woman calmly mislabeling your reaction as the problem. Still, I was not blind. I noticed the new dresses, the extra gym sessions, the way her phone became more guarded than nuclear launch codes, the way she smiled at messages and then looked vaguely annoyed when I entered the room, like I had interrupted something she preferred over my existence. One night I came home early because a client meeting got canceled. I walked in quietly through the garage, loosened my tie, and heard her laughing in the kitchen. That laugh was old Vanessa. Full, loose, almost girlish. I had not heard it directed at me in months. For one stupid second I smiled. Then I heard her say, "Stop. If he heard you say that, he'd spiral for a week." I stopped in the hallway. A male voice came faintly through the speaker of her phone. I could not make out the words, but I heard enough to know it was not a female friend from book club discussing historical fiction and emotional literacy. Then she laughed again. "Please," she said. "He notices less than you think." Now, that one sat in my chest like a brick. Not because it hurt, because it clarified. There is a beautiful moment in every man's life when confusion dies and gets replaced by focus. I stepped into the kitchen. Vanessa turned so fast you would have thought I had kicked open the door wearing a SWAT vest. "Hey," I said. She ended the call so quickly it was practically a confession. "Dean, you're home early." No kidding. I was under the impression this was also my house. She forced a smile. "I was talking to Maya." "Interesting. Maya sounds like she hit puberty late." She gave me that look. That offended, superior look women like her use when they know you are right, but need you to feel crude for saying it out loud. "You're being weird. And you're being sloppy. Big week for both of us." She crossed her arms. "It was a work call. Then congratulations to your company on hiring the flirtiest accountant in North America." That was the moment I stopped trying to save the marriage and started studying the exit routes. After that, I did not confront her again. Not because I was scared, Because I am not stupid enough to interrupt a liar while she is still building the lie. If you wait, they decorate it. Add lighting, pillows. And Vanessa loved decorating narratives. So I watched. I noticed she began using phrases like, "I need space," and "I'm trying to reconnect with myself," which in my experience often means, I want to behave selfishly and still be described as brave. The best part was that she thought she was subtle. One evening, she came downstairs in a black dress that looked like it had been engineered by a committee of dangerous men and asked, "Do I look okay?" I looked up from my laptop. If a woman who looks like that asks whether she looks okay, she is not seeking feedback. She is gathering worship. "You look like a lawsuit," I said. She smirked despite herself. "So that's a yes." "What's the occasion?" "Jenna's birthday dinner. I told you." No, she had not told me. Vanessa believed mentioning something vaguely in my direction while scrolling Instagram counted as communication. "Right," I said. "Jenna, the woman who has celebrated turning 34 4 times. She's 32. Then she needs to stop living like a divorced yacht broker." Vanessa rolled her eyes, grabbed her purse, and headed to the door. "Then why does it feel like you're going to a casting, not a birthday?" I said. She turned slowly. "What is wrong with you lately?" "I'm asking because if Jenna's birthday includes a man under 40 named Tyler with emotional issues and a beard, I want to make sure you get home safe." Her expression hardened. "You know what? This suspicious, sarcastic version of you is exhausting." "Funny," I said. "I was just going to say the same about this dishonest, smug version of you. But look at us, twins." She left without another word. I watched from the front window as a black SUV pulled up at the curb 5 minutes later, and she got in. I did not chase the car. I did not call 10 times. I did not send some pathetic paragraph asking her to just be honest. Men who beg for truth from someone enjoying deception are basically asking a pickpocket to check their pockets one more time. Instead, I took a picture of the SUV, got the plate, and sent it to my friend Nate. Nate was a former college roommate, current private security consultant, an enthusiastic enemy of nonsense. He texted back in under a minute. "Who is that?" "Possibly my wife's extracurricular activity." "Need details?" "Yes." "Need a shovel?" "Let's stay flexible." Over the next 2 weeks, I learned 3 important things. First, there was a man. His name was Colin Mercer, 41, divorced, ran some regional marketing firm full of aggressively moisturized men who used words like synergy and disruptive in daylight without shame. He was one of those polished suburban predators who always looked like he had just stepped out of a luxury car commercial where nobody ever mentions child support. Second, Vanessa had not stumbled into this by accident. This was not, "I was vulnerable" territory. This was scheduling, planning, outfit coordination, and strategic lying. Lunches, drinks, wellness events. One fake charity panel that apparently involved more kissing than fundraising. Third, and most important, she had been testing me. That was the part that made me laugh. Once you get over the rage, betrayal can become deeply embarrassing for the other person. Vanessa was not just cheating. She was auditioning my level of weakness. Pushing, withholding, needling, waiting to see whether I would shrink. Maybe she wanted a fight to justify herself. Maybe she wanted me broken. Maybe she just liked feeling adored somewhere else while treating me like furniture at home. Whatever the reason, I decided on one thing very clearly. I was not going to be the husband who found out, cried in the pantry, and gave a speech about memories. No. If Vanessa wanted theater, I was willing to produce. The invitation to the party came 3 days later. It was one of those awful glossy Evites from our friends Lila and Grant. A couple so aggressively social, they treated every mild occasion like the fall of Rome deserved catering. Saturday, cocktails, backyard, casual chic. Vanessa looked up from her phone that evening and said, "We're still going to Lila's on Saturday, right?" I was making a sandwich. "Depends. Are you unveiling my replacement there, or is this more of a soft launch?" She stared at me. I took a bite and kept chewing. Lately, I had stopped cushioning my words for her comfort. Turns out the truth gets a lot cleaner when you stop wrapping it in foam. "What is that supposed to mean?" she asked. "It means the tone in this house has been weird for months, and you're either lying to me, cheating on me." She gave a short, incredulous laugh. "You really have lost your mind." "No, I found pattern recognition." She grabbed her wine glass and leaned against the counter. "You know what your problem is? You always think you're the smartest person in the room." "That cannot be my problem. It keeps getting confirmed." She took a sip. "If you're so miserable, maybe don't come." I smiled at her, not warmly. "Oh, I'm coming." Saturday arrived warm and clear, the kind of spring evening that tricks people into thinking their bad decisions will photograph beautifully. Vanessa took forever getting ready, which was perfect because it gave me time to admire the machinery of arrogance. The hair, the makeup, the earrings, the pale silk blouse, the fitted cream trousers. She dressed like a woman expecting to be looked at and agreed with. I wore dark jeans, a fitted charcoal button-down, and the expression of a man who had already read the ending. When she came downstairs, she paused. "You changed your beard." "Trimmed it. It looks good." "Thanks," I said. "I figured if my marriage is dying, I might as well look expensive." She narrowed her eyes. "You've been acting very strange. And you've been acting like your phone should be buried with military honors." She scoffed and grabbed her purse. "Please do not embarrass me tonight." I opened the door for her. "Vanessa, if you end up embarrassed tonight, I assure you it will be because of your own hard work." Grant greeted us at the gate with a drink in each hand and the flushed enthusiasm of a man 3 bourbons ahead of his own personality. "Dean, Vanessa, there they are." Grant pulled me into a side hug strong enough to qualify as regional wrestling. Vanessa got an air kiss and a compliment about how amazing she looked, which she accepted like tribute. Inside the backyard, the usual crowd had assembled. Lila, Jenna, Marcus loudly explaining smoked brisket to someone who had not asked. 2 new couples no one actually knew that well, but who had somehow been added to the social bloodstream. And then there was Colin. He stood near the bar setup in a navy blazer, laughing at something one of the women said, all polished teeth and easy confidence. The kind of man who looked like he had opinions about cufflinks and emotionally unavailable fathers. He saw Vanessa before he saw me. That was interesting. Then he looked at me and smiled like we had met once at a fundraiser for dishonest haircuts. Grant clapped me on the shoulder. "You know Colin, right? Colin Mercer. He and Vanessa crossed paths on that city arts board thing." I looked at Colin. He extended a hand. "Dean, good to see you." His grip was firm, practiced. The handshake of a man who thinks eye contact can erase misconduct. I shook once and let go. "Likewise," I said. "Always nice to meet the community-minded." Vanessa shot me a look so small, no one else would have noticed it. But I did. That was the fun part about being underestimated. People stopped hiding their tells. For the first hour, I played nice. Better than nice, actually. I was charming, relaxed, funny. I made Lila laugh twice, helped Grant rescue a tray of sliders from his own drunk coordination, and had a 10-minute conversation with Jenna's husband about motorcycles that contained more honesty than my marriage had seen all year. Vanessa kept glancing at me like I was a bomb with unexpectedly elegant shoes. Every now and then, I caught her and Colin orbiting too close, not touching. They were smarter than that in public. But there is a body language between 2 guilty people that feels almost magnetic. The eye contact that lingers 1 breath too long. The fake casualness so deliberate it becomes suspicious. At one point, Lila came up beside me while I was opening another beer. "You two okay?" she asked quietly. I looked at her. "Why?" She hesitated. "Vanessa's been, I don't know, different." That was diplomatic. Lila had always been one of those women who tried to soften bad news so much it arrived pre-upholstered. "Different how?" She glanced across the yard, where Vanessa was laughing near the fire pit, one hand touching Colin's sleeve for a fraction too long. Lila exhaled through her nose, like she's already somewhere else. I took a sip of beer. That makes two of us. Lila looked at me sharply then, as if she had expected deflection and found a knife instead. Dean, it's fine, I said. Or it will be. And that was the truth. Because by then, I had already moved beyond heartbreak into logistics. The house documents were copied. My separate accounts were ready. A lawyer had reviewed everything. I had screenshots, dates, photos, and enough quiet preparation to survive whatever performance Vanessa thought she was building toward. I just did not know she was going to hand me the perfect moment herself. That came later, after more drinks, when the sky had gone dark and the patio lights made everyone look slightly richer and slightly dumber. Grant, now deep in his role as host philosopher, started one of those dreadful group conversations people have after alcohol loosens the bolts on their dignity. He lifted his glass and said, "Okay, let's do something dangerous." Jenna groaned. "No." "Yes," Grant said. "Absolutely yes. Everybody answers one question." Marcus pointed at him. "Every time you say that, someone almost gets divorced." Grant grinned. "Exactly. That's what makes it interactive." A ripple of laughter moved through the group. Vanessa was sitting across from me by then, one leg crossed, wine glass in hand, looking radiant and just detached enough to be admired by idiots. Grant spread his arms. "Simple question, for the married people especially. What keeps your relationship going after all this time?" There were groans, jokes, a few mock protests. Jenna said, "Mutually assured destruction." Her husband raised his glass. "And synchronized tax filing." Laughter. Marcus said, "A good mattress and low expectations." "Beautiful," Grant said. "That's real poetry." Then his eyes landed on Vanessa. "What about you two?" he asked with a grin. "Dean, Vanessa, you've been together, 7 years married? What keeps the fire alive?" Vanessa smiled, and I knew. Not because I could read minds, because I could read her. That smile was not warm. It was not affectionate. It was not even drunk. It was the smile of someone who had been waiting for a stage and had just been handed a microphone. She took a slow sip of her wine, like she was buying herself half a second to enjoy the attention, then set the glass down and leaned back slightly in her chair. "Honestly?" she said. Grant grinned. "Always a dangerous start." A few people laughed. Vanessa glanced around the group, just enough to make sure everyone was looking at her. She had always known how to hold a room. It was one of the things I used to admire. Now it just felt like watching a magician I already knew was using wires. "Honestly," she repeated, "nothing." The word landed light, too light, like she had dropped something sharp but wrapped it in silk. There was a beat. Someone chuckled, assuming it was a joke. Vanessa didn't correct them. She tilted her head, almost thoughtfully, then added, "I mean it. There's no big secret. No spark we're protecting. No magic." The laughter faded. You could feel the air shift. Grant let out a small, awkward laugh. "Okay, that got real fast." Jenna glanced between us like she had just realized she was sitting in the front row of something she did not buy tickets for. Vanessa kept going. "Of course she did." "When you've been together long enough," she said, almost conversationally, "you realize you're not really choosing each other anymore. You're just there, out of habit." That one drew a few uncomfortable smiles. Someone said, "Wow," under their breath. I didn't move. I didn't interrupt. I just watched her, because this was not impulsive. This was curated. This was something she had thought about, rehearsed, maybe even wanted, and now she had an audience. She glanced at me for a split second, checking, measuring, waiting to see if I'd flinch. I didn't give her that. She looked back at the group and shrugged lightly, like she was sharing a mildly controversial opinion about overpriced restaurants. "He's comfortable," she said, nodding slightly in my direction without really looking at me. "Safe. Predictable." A couple of people shifted in their seats. Marcus cleared his throat like he was trying to cough his way out of the conversation. Vanessa smiled again, softer this time. "But love?" she said. I don't even love him anymore. We're just stuck together. He's comfortable, that's it. There it was. Clean, direct, no drama, no shouting, just a quiet execution in a well-lit backyard. For a second, nobody spoke. Even Grant, who treated silence like a personal enemy, didn't know how to fill it. I heard the faint crackle of the fire pit. A glass clinked somewhere. Someone's phone buzzed and went ignored. And in the middle of all that, I felt calm. Not shocked, not devastated, just confirmed. There's a strange clarity that comes when the thing you suspected finally steps out of the shadows and introduces itself. No more guessing. No more, maybe I'm overthinking. Just truth. Ugly, but clean. Vanessa shifted slightly in her chair, finally turning her head toward me as if remembering I was technically part of the conversation. "Dean," she said lightly, "you're very quiet." A few heads turned toward me. There it was, her second move. Public honesty, followed by public expectation. She wanted a reaction. Anger would have been perfect for her. It would let her play the calm one, the reasonable one. Pain would have been even better. Nothing feeds that kind of ego like visible damage. I set my beer down on the table, took my time, looked at her. It's funny how someone can look exactly the same and still feel like a completely different person once you stop lying to yourself about them. "That's funny," I said. My voice came out even, not loud, not sharp, just placed. Vanessa's smile flickered for a fraction of a second. "Because I was just thinking the same thing," I added. A few people leaned in slightly. She frowned, just a little. "About what?" I held her gaze. "About not feeling it anymore." Vanessa blinked. "That's not—" she started, but I didn't let her finish. "See, the difference is," I said, leaning back in my chair, mirroring her earlier posture almost perfectly. I didn't need an audience to say it out loud. Silence again. Heavier this time. Grant looked like he was actively reconsidering ever speaking again. Vanessa straightened slightly. "What exactly are you implying?" There it was. Defensive. "I'm not implying anything," I said. "I'm agreeing with you." I picked up my beer again, took a small sip, then set it back down like we were discussing weather patterns. "No spark," I continued. "No magic, just habit." Vanessa's jaw tightened. That was new. She wasn't used to me stepping into the frame like this. She was used to me either smoothing things over or questioning myself. This version of me didn't do either. "You're being sarcastic," she said. "No," I replied. "I'm being accurate." A couple of people shifted uncomfortably. Jenna muttered, "Okay, maybe new topic." Vanessa ignored her. "Dean, if you have something to say, just say it," she said, a little sharper now. I smiled. "Oh, I do," I said. And then I paused. Because silence, used correctly, is louder than shouting. Because I could feel the room leaning in whether they wanted to or not. Vanessa held my gaze, something uneasy creeping into her expression now. That meant she hadn't planned this part. "Here's the thing," I said calmly. "You're right about one thing." She didn't respond. She just watched me. "So let's not pretend this is some slow, emotional drift," I continued, "or that we both just quietly fell out of love." A muscle in her jaw twitched, because that would be a very generous rewrite of what's actually been happening. Now people weren't just uncomfortable, they were alert. Vanessa let out a short laugh. "Oh my God, are we really doing this right now?" I tilted my head slightly. "You started it," I said. "That one hit." She glanced around quickly, as if suddenly aware that the room was no longer on her side by default. "Dean, you're making this into something it's not," she said. I shook my head slowly. "No," I replied. "I'm making it into exactly what it is." I leaned forward just a little, resting my forearms on my knees, relaxed, grounded, in control. "You didn't just wake up one day and stop loving me," I said. "You replaced me first." Vanessa went very still. "Excuse me?" she said. I held her eyes. No need to pretend, I said. You're not that bad at lying, but you're not as good as you think either. Dean, she snapped. Watch your tone. I almost laughed. My tone? I repeated. That's what we're focusing on? I gestured lightly toward her. You just announced to a group of people that you don't love your husband anymore, I said. But yeah, let's workshop my tone. A couple of people actually let out small, nervous laughs at that. Vanessa's cheeks flushed slightly. Anger now. That's not what I said, she insisted. I raised an eyebrow. Do you want me to quote you, or should we all just trust the memory of 20 witnesses? Grant looked like he wanted to crawl into the fire pit and disappear. Vanessa opened her mouth, then closed it. For the first time that night, she didn't have a clean line ready. So I helped her. You said there's no spark, I continued. No love, just comfort. I nodded slowly. Which is interesting considering how much effort you've been putting into impressing someone else lately. Now the word had shape. Now the implication had a direction. You could feel the shift ripple through the group. Eyes moved. Toward Colin. He froze mid-sip, glass halfway to his mouth. Vanessa's head snapped slightly in his direction before she caught herself. Too late. Way too late. And just like that, the wires were visible. Colin didn't move. That was the first mistake. Most men in his position would have laughed it off, made a joke, taken a step back, created distance, anything to blur the lines. Colin just stood there, still, polished, quiet, like he thought composure could outplay reality. Vanessa recovered faster than he did. She straightened in her chair, let out a short, dismissive laugh, and shook her head like I'd just said something mildly ridiculous. "Oh my God," she said. "This is insane." "Is it?" I asked. "Yes," she snapped. "You're literally inventing things because you're, what, feeling insecure? Embarrassed? I don't even know anymore." There it was, classic move, deny, diminish, redirect. I nodded slowly. "Right," I said. "So let's go with your version for a second." She folded her arms. "Gladly." I leaned back again, casual. "According to you," I continued, "there's no love left, no spark, nothing worth holding on to." She didn't interrupt this time. "And at the same time," I added, "you've been going out more, dressing better, guarding your phone like it's evidence in a federal case, and somehow, pure coincidence, you've also developed this very specific kind of chemistry with Colin." I didn't even look at him when I said his name. Didn't need to. Heads turned. Eyes shifted. Vanessa's composure cracked just a little. "Stop it," she said sharply. "Stop what?" I asked. "Using names?" "You're embarrassing yourself," she shot back. I smiled. "That's interesting," I said. "Because 5 minutes ago, I was the only one here not talking about our marriage like it's already dead." A couple of people looked down at their drinks. Grant whispered something to Lila that looked a lot like regret. Vanessa leaned forward slightly now, voice lower, tighter. "You don't get to twist this," she said. "You don't get to stand here and act like I'm some villain because I was honest." I tilted my head. "Honest?" I repeated. "That's what we're calling it now?" "Yes," she said. "I said how I feel." "No," I said calmly. "You said what benefits you." She froze for half a second. "See, honesty would have been telling me this months ago," I continued. "Not waiting until there's an audience and a glass of wine in your hand." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "That's not fair." "Neither is outsourcing your emotional life while keeping me around for structure," I replied. That got a reaction. A couple of people shifted harder this time. One of the new guys actually whispered, "Damn!" under his breath. Vanessa exhaled sharply through her nose. "You're making assumptions," she said. "You don't know anything." I nodded once. "You're right," I said. For a second, she thought she'd won that exchange. Then I continued. "I didn't know anything," I said. "At first. I reached for my phone but didn't unlock it yet, just held it loosely in my hand. I thought maybe it was stress," I went on, "or distance, or whatever excuse people use when they don't want to admit something's off." Vanessa didn't speak. She just watched me now. I told myself I was overthinking, I said. That I was reading into things that weren't there. Turns out I was just late. I let that hang for a second longer, then unlocked my phone. I don't need to guess, I said. I don't need to imply. I glanced down at the screen, then back up. Colin Mercer, I said casually. 41, divorced, runs a marketing firm and apparently specializes in poor timing. That did it. The room changed. Immediately. Vanessa's face went still. That kind of stillness only shows up when someone realizes the situation just moved out of their control. Colin set his glass down. Dean, Vanessa said quietly, put your phone away. I looked at her. No, I said. You don't get to manage this moment. You gave that up when you decided to turn our marriage into a group discussion. She stood up. Fast. Enough, she said. This is not the place. You're right, I cut in. It wasn't. But you made it one. That hit harder than anything loud would have. She looked around now, at the faces, the silence, the shift. This wasn't going how she imagined. Dean, you're overreacting, she said, but there was a crack in it now. No, I replied. I'm reacting exactly once. I slipped my phone back into my pocket. No shouting, I said. No scene. You already did that part. A couple of people exchanged glances again. Vanessa shook her head, almost desperate now to regain footing. There is nothing going on, she said, louder this time. You're connecting dots that don't exist. I looked at her for a long second. Then I nodded toward Colin. Then he won't mind clarifying, I said. All eyes shifted again. Colin exhaled slowly, like a man who had just realized silence was no longer a viable strategy. Look, he said, raising his hand slightly, controlled, measured. I think this has gotten out of hand. Of course, corporate damage control voice. I've met Vanessa a few times through work, he continued. We've had conversations. That's it. Vanessa seized that immediately. Exactly, she said. Thank you. I smiled faintly. Conversations, I repeated. That's a clean word. Colin's jaw tightened. You're reading into things, he said. There's nothing inappropriate. I raised a hand slightly. Careful, I said. Don't overcommit. You might accidentally say something that doesn't match the timeline. Vanessa's eyes flicked to Colin. First real one of the night, and that's when I knew. They hadn't coordinated. They hadn't prepared for this version of me. Good. That meant I was finally ahead, and I wasn't planning to give that back. Colin didn't move. Dean, he said calmly, you're escalating something that doesn't need to be escalated. I almost smiled. Funny. From where I'm sitting, the only one who escalated anything is my wife. Stop, Vanessa snapped. Both of you. No, I said. You don't get to control this. She stepped closer. You're crossing a line. Which one? I asked. The one where I notice, or the one where I speak? She lowered her voice. This isn't how you handle things. No, I said quietly. This is how you handle them when you're done pretending. Colin tried again. I'm not going to stand here and be accused. You don't have to, I cut in. You already did your part. I've had enough. I pulled out my phone. I've already talked to a lawyer. It's done. She went pale. You're lying. No, I said. That was your role. I grabbed my jacket. I hope it was worth it. Then I glanced at Colin. Take care of her. You seem invested. No one answered. Behind me, she called my name. I didn't stop. Because some things don't end with shouting. They end with a decision. I didn't go home that night. I drove for a while. No music, no calls, just the sound of the engine and that strange, quiet feeling you get when something heavy finally stops pressing on your chest. I ended up at Nate's place around midnight. He opened the door, took one look at me, and stepped aside without asking questions. Beer? He said. Yeah. We sat on his balcony, city lights in the distance, both of us quiet for a while. So, he said eventually, did you press the button? Yeah. He nodded like that confirmed something he already knew. How'd she take it? I took a sip. Like someone who thought they were in control of the script. He snorted. And? I changed the ending. That got a small smile out of him. Good, he said. The divorce was quick, clean, and almost disappointingly quiet. No scenes, no last-minute drama, no emotional reversals, just signatures, deadlines, and two people finalizing something that had already ended long before the paperwork caught up. Vanessa tried briefly to slow things down, not with emotion, but with control. Subtle attempts to delay, to reframe, to soften what had happened. It didn't work. There was nothing left to negotiate. Once she realized that, she stopped. Colin appeared exactly once during the process. Not as a central figure, more like someone trying to step into a story that no longer needed him. That moment said more than anything else. Whatever they had built in secrecy didn't translate well into reality. After the divorce, they stayed in contact for a while. But without the tension, without the risk, without the contrast that made everything feel intense, their connection started to lose shape. What looked strong in the shadows turned out to be fragile in the open. They didn't last. Vanessa didn't come out of it happier. From the outside, her life looked the same. Same circles, same routines, same image. But something shifted. The confidence was still there, but it felt thinner, less certain. Like it depended more on being seen than being secure. What she chose didn't build anything new. It just replaced something stable with something temporary. As for me, life became simpler. Not easier, not perfect, but clearer. No guessing, no second guessing, no trying to interpret silence or read between lines that shouldn't have been there in the first place. Just decisions, clean ones. And once you get used to that, you don't really miss the noise. She thought she was ending our story that night. She didn't realize I had already written the last chapter. If you felt this story hit hard, drop a like, subscribe for more, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support keeps Steelheart beating.